Hey everybody, it's Keith here today to discuss with you old sales versus new sales. I still see a lot of people are using techniques in different places that I go to, and I could tell that there's nothing wrong with reading a sales book that was written in 1942. The issue is that most of those guys that wrote those books, I'm not going to name any names, and I've read them all and I love them, but most of those guys are either in their 80s, 90s, or they're not even alive at this point, and they stopped selling in the 60s and 70s to be writers and sales trainers. So you could get stuff out of them, but those techniques are not going to necessarily work in 2018 if you're selling cars or real estate or telemarketing, or selling anything for that matter, services, products. Um, but the main thing that hasn't changed, like I've said in my past videos, is having overcoming objections is always going to be something that I believe will be an asset if you're good at doing them, or overcoming them. Because like I say all the time, if somebody says something to you, it doesn't matter if you're selling a service or product to some, or trying to sell something to somebody, or you're talking to a friend or family member. If somebody makes a statement and you don't have a pre-planned logical response to that person's statement, essentially you lose. So, or at least you don't get your point across the way you want it to. So, not having something to say to somebody, especially in sales, is a great way for sure to almost lose the sale when you're tongue tied. Somebody says, "Oh, let me discuss this with my wife, and I'll call you next week." If you don't have anything to say to that, other than okay, the chances of you closing that deal are relatively low. Another thing that I like to watch or study that I consider sales, that has helped me with certain aspects of selling, is the art of criminal defense. And what I mean by that is listening to the best criminal defense attorneys defend clients. A lot of them are guilty, a lot of them are not. One thing that comes to mind I'd like to share with you, I find that stories are the best way to educate. So I'm going to share a quick story with you. Probably about 6 years ago, I'm not going to include names in the story, but about 6 years ago, maybe even a little less, there was a doctor that was arrested, and the doctor was charged with inappropriately touching female victims while they were either unconscious or whatever the case may be. And the reason that I followed the case was because the attorney that he selected to defend him when he was charged is, in my opinion, one of the best criminal defense attorneys, at least in my area, maybe even in the United States. And the doctor ended up getting in trouble because one of the female victims came forward and went to another attorney and said, "Hey, I want to sue this doctor because he, touched me inappropriately." And the attorney that she went to try to help her sue the doctor just so happened to be a former chief state's attorney for the entire region of my area. And so he was the top prosecutor. He was the boss prosecutor, and he oversaw all the other prosecutors in a large area. And he all of a sudden quit and became a criminal defense attorney. So anyway, this woman, you went from one side of the fence to the other. So this woman went to see this former chief state's attorney and said, "I want to sue the doctor." And he went on the news and made a public statement asking if there were any more victims of this doctor. And 7 other women came forward in a short period of time. So anyway, then the lawyer, contacted the police, and the 8 women gave statements, and the doctor was arrested. Well, the doctor didn't know he was going to get arrested, and they went to his house early one morning, and they handcuffed the doctor, and they brought him to court. And a family member of the doctor called this lawyer that I like. So the lawyer didn't have a lot of time to prepare for this. They said, "Can you come to court in 30 minutes for the arraignment?" And so the doctor was arraigned. He posted a large bail, and he walked out the front steps of the courthouse that day with the attorney. And the news was there, with the mics and the cameras in his face, saying, what's going on here? I mean, this guy was inappropriately touching all these girls. And a lot of attorneys would say to that, "No comment, no comment." Well, let me tell you something. being an attorney is very similar to being in sales, just like, it's like being in politics as well. And when a lawyer says no comment, it's like, are you kidding me? That just makes your client look even more guilty. I mean, you don't have to say the greatest thing when the news comes out. And I respect the fact that a lot of attorneys don't like to discuss the facts of the case, but I mean, I find that the best attorneys always have a comment because what they're trying to do is persuade the general public that this, client is innocent, whether they really are or maybe they're guilty. But they asked the lawyer for this doctor, what is going on here? And the lawyer said, I've known the doctor for many years. He's a phenomenal physician. Uh, the funny thing about this case, he said, is the first victim came forward. She said she was actually raped by the doctor. She didn't go to the police. She went to a lawyer, and it was a former chief state's attorney at that, who just became a lawyer a couple months ago. And I find it unusual, if one of my family members were raped by a doctor, I'd think the first thing that they would do is go to the police. That's what the lawyer said. So he said, anyway, then the former chief state's attorney, now criminal defense attorney, made a public plea on the news asking for more victims to come forward. And other women came forward. He said, it sounds to me like the former chief state's attorney is looking for a payday. He said, and, I'm looking forward to taking the case to trial. We're going to take it all the way because the doctor maintains his innocence. And I can't wait to put the former chief state's attorney on the stand and say, Mr. Former Chief State's Attorney, which side of the bread are you trying to butter? And I thought that was a phenomenal response. And wouldn't you know that the case dragged on for about 2 years and the doctor was ultimately found not guilty on all charges. And I believe that when a lawyer makes an impressive statement like that, it has a big impact on the minds of the general public. And who knows, some of those people that were on the jury that acquitted the doctor might have saw that, story on the news. And it's like, it's true. The guy, the victims didn't go to the police. They went to, the first victim went to a lawyer. That's a little odd, not contacting the police first if you were raped. And then the lawyer made the public plea for more victims to come forward, and all these people started popping out of the woodwork. And, it also sounds to me like the attorney might have been looking for a payday. But criminal defense is a great comparison to sales because the lawyers are always put in situations where they get asked the tough questions and have to have intelligent answers. And the ones that don't have intelligent answers, you never hear of them because they don't make it, into the big leagues. But the people with the gift of gab and the people that are good at overcoming objections, they always rise to the top of whatever industry they're in, whether it be politics, lawyers, salesmen. And another quick one that I saw, a different attorney that I liked, went on a television show with one of his clients, that had just been acquitted from a huge some kind of she was running a big escort service, and the lawyer got her off. And so she went on the Dr. Phil show. And every time and the lawyer went with her to make sure that she didn't say anything that she shouldn't. And every time Dr. Phil asked the woman a question, the attorney would answer the question for her. And eventually Dr. Phil got sick of that. And he said, listen, I appreciate that you're answering these questions, but she's an adult. She can speak for herself. Why can't she answer? And the lawyer said, because I can say it better than she can, Dr. Phil. And that's another example of a great response. Because I can say it better than she can. And he said it quick and confident. And, if you're in sales, you'll appreciate stuff like that, and you'll also notice it and pick up on it. Just wanted to share those stories with you. I'll be back soon to do more rebuttals. I like giving actual examples of when somebody says something, what can you say to them? If you watch my other videos, you'll see that I've done some already. If you liked this video, do me a favor and just click like down below. I would greatly appreciate it, and I will see you guys again soon.